Good evening and welcome to the recap of the eighth round of the 45th FIDE Chess Olympiad going on in Budapest. And when I say the recap, I'm actually talking about Nigerian games, all right? So pretty much I've been talking about the games played by Nigerian players. In this round, the Nigerians were paired against the Maldives, and it was a very interesting matchup. And Nigeria did the needful in this round. What do I mean by that? The Nigerian won the match. Um, they won the match through the score of 3-1. So let us get right into the games. Now, the first game we want to go over was the game played by Mohamed Shua against Kigia Bumo on the first board. So let's get right into it. E4, knight f6. Bumo has been playing very interesting lately. And what do I mean by that? He's been playing openings he's not really used to playing and defenses as well, which is pretty impressive because I think he's definitely working on his game. Good job, Boulogne. Keep it up. So e4, knight f6, we have the Alekhine defense, e5, knight to d5, d4, d6. Normally, the Alekhine defense falls under the hypermoderns. And what do I mean by that? In chess, we have two schools of thought. We have the hypermoderns and we have the classical school of chess, hypermoderns and the Terra school of chess. So the hypermoderns pretty much believe that they don't have to put their pawns in the center squares to control it. They believe they can just, fianchet to their bishop and just attack the center or control the center squares from a distance. Whereas the Terra school of thought believes they have to occupy those squares to be able to control it. I'm going to have to move a little bit faster because I have like 4 games to go through. So d6 is played. Of course, the idea of d6 is to break the pawn structure. So captures, it captures back, and the idea is to be able to get a very quick development of the bishop. Knight f3 is played, bishop to e7, bishop c4, putting pressure on the knight that is unprotected on d5. Knight b6, get a tempo back on the bishop, and the bishop gladly moved to the best diagonal, which is the b1 h7. Notice that there is no knight on f6 protecting the h7 square. That's something you want to think about. So bishop g4 was played, h3, bishop to h5, maintaining the pin, asking white, do you want to play g4 or just gonna let me there and let me just enjoy myself there. So white said, I'm not really, I'm just gonna keep developing my pieces. Knight bd2, knight c6. The threat is to win a pawn on d4 with the move knight takes d4. We cannot capture back because of the pin on the queen. The pin on the queen. So c3 is played here. Black castles, white castles. Knight to d5. Once you're done developing your pieces, it's time for you to improve the placement of the pieces. That means you want to move them forward, preferably into your opponent's territory. And of course, we can see the knight is coming to the square f4. And we don't want that to happen. And especially when we've developed 3 of our minor pieces, but there's still one yet to get in the game. And of course, the next move white played makes an opportunity for the bishop to get right in the game. Maybe not right away, but yes, the bishop can get in the game. So let's keep going. Knight f6, knight g3, putting pressure on the bishop. Bishop to g6, bishop takes g6. I really don't like that move. I would have preferred the move like knight f5 is a good move. Sorry, knight f5 or queen c2. Just making sure white has control over a certain square in black's position. So bishop g6 captures that. Um, d5 is played. I'm not so sure about the d5 move. I don't know why white played that. Probably is trying to make sure this bishop can get in the game anytime soon. But knight to e5 was played. Rook to e1, centralizing your pieces. Always centralize your pieces. Pretty much means you want to put all your pieces to the 2 central squares, which is the e5 and the d file. Just put them there. Something good is going to happen. So knight goes back to d7, c4, protecting the pawn on d5. Anytime you have to protect the pawn, try not to make sure you have just the piece. If you can protect the pawn of a pawn, much easier. better so that your pieces can do other stuffs. C4, good move. Rook to E8, bishop to E3. White finally develops the last minor piece. So white is fully developed. I mean, by the time it moves the queen up, it's fully developed. That means it's dealt all his minor pieces, he's connected his rooks, and white is happy. So bishop to E7, making sure the rook has a sight on the long file, the E file. B4, I wasn't so sure about this move. Personally, I would have played a move like B3. B3, just, B3, put your pawns on the light square for now, Queen D2, or maybe Queen C2, Rook A D1, just try to put them to where something can happen so that, your opponent might just gift you something. But B4 was played in this position. C6, the idea of the C6 is to break this pawn chain, and that's one. Another thing is to make sure this queen can breathe, because moving the pawn back to C7, the queen doesn't look like he has any squares. The queen doesn't really look good. So C6 is a good move, trying to break the pawn structure of white so that the black pieces can move freely. So captures back. B5, I wasn't so sure about that move. And I think this is where white started losing the trade, because I actually felt white has a slight edge, not winning, but just slight. Why? Because it had better placement of pieces. Pieces can move freer than black. That should count for something. So let's keep going. Captures back. Queen to A5. Finally, the queen comes into the game with tempo, putting pressure on the pawn on B5. So A4 is, like I said earlier, if you have to defend the pawn, always use a pawn, not a piece, because when you use a piece, the piece gets tied down to the defense of that pawn. So A6, putting pressure on the pawn on B5, rook to B1. For example, if it takes, pawn takes, and white is just, that's a pass pawn black has to deal with. But white says, no, I'm just going to move my knight to C5, put pressure on your pawn on A4. What are you going to do about that? White said, well, I'm going to just give up the pawn for some active play, and let's hope that active play turns out to something substantial. So knight D4 was played. After knight D4, we have queen takes A4 by black. And looking at this position, I think black is kind of freeing his position gradually. Even though I still feel white has a slight pull because of the bishop on F8 not doing a whole lot. So it takes back with queen, knight takes. Now pawn push, now he has a pass pawn. Despite the fact black is a pawn up, the position is totally even. And we can thank this bishop on F8 because it's not really doing it's not doing much, maybe anything, So let's keep going. Knight C5, knight to C6. Now the idea is just to push the pawn down and make sure this pawn gets, gets a piece. But black said, no, I can't let you do that. I'm just going to blockade the pawn. One thing we always have to remember is when you are playing against a pass pawn, please make sure the pawn is blockaded. Because if the pawn is not blockaded, that's when you really get to know what the definition of what a pass pawn is, So let's keep going. Bishop to D4, knight to D7, putting pressure on the pawn on B6, captures on E8, captures back, rook to A1, threatening to capture the pawn on A6. At least, why give up a pawn earlier? I says, you know what, it's time I get my pawn back. Black says, no, not ready, not today. I'm just going to hold on to the pawn for a little while. But knight A5 was played, or knight E2, that's a good move. That's a good move. That's a good move. Knight E2 was played because it's important the knight gets close to where it can help the pawn get promotion. So knight E2. Now D5 is played. I would say it's a good move because it frees the bishop. Frees the bishop. So the bishop can breathe. Although the pawn on D5, I always have a knight. There's always knight F4 to put pressure on the pawn. Anytime you see a pawn that is undefended, that is weak, you want to do what? Put pressure on the pawn and try to win it. So knight A5, very important. What's the point of knight A5? Getting rid of the blockade. Let my people go. I'm trying to push my pawn all the way. So knight A5 was played. Knight C5. And this is where black blundered. Knight C5 was just a bad move. And if white had played this position well, white should be on his way to victory, but it was not to be in this game. Bishop captures back. Rook to b1. What's the threat? The threat is simply b7. If the rook goes to b8, we have knight to d4 with the idea of knight to c6, and the curtain comes down and game over. So the knight went back to d7, trying to create a blockade on the pawn and also attacking the pawn at the same time. So here, this is where white returned the favor. White blundered by making the move knight d4. That was not a good move. There's a saying, and I'm going to say it again. Anytime you have a pass pawn, please just push the pawn. Just let the pawn go first. Just push the pawn. Pawn push would have really been much better for white in this position. Anyway, let's get back to the game. So knight d4. Now here comes the tactics that white missed. Knight takes, rook takes, bishop pins. Sorry, bishop skewers the rook and the knight. All of a sudden, black is looking good. Bishop takes, and I say this, black is winning. Black is winning. So let's keep going. Tempo on the knight. Captures. Bishop takes, not such a good move by black. Rook to d8 was a much better move, activating the rook, check is possible if the king moves. If you snap a pawn, this just does look bad for white. Bad. But I guess black was in a hurry to wrap this game up and decided to take the bishop, take the knight on a5. Let me say that real quickly. If you have a bishop against a knight in an open position, please keep it. Keep it, especially when the knight is, especially when we have an extra pawn. Keep it. You got to keep that bishop. You got to make the knight suffer because the knight is going to try to hop around, but the bishop doesn't need to hop from one step all the way to the other. So bishop don't need to hop around in positions like this. So if you have a bishop against a knight in an open position, please keep it. So let's keep going. Bishop takes, rook takes. And now I'm going to move a little fast because this game just went into a rook pawn ending that, if you play rook pawn ending, being a pawn up is not enough. The most important thing in a rook pawn ending is for you to know your rook pawn endings, because sometimes you could be a pawn up, you could be two pawns up, and the game is just totally draw. So White did an excellent job of getting the king into the center of the board as quick as possible. Another thing I want us to know is in rook pawn endings, the position of your king is very important. Sorry, not just rook pawn endings. In every ending, the position of your king is very important. If your king is more active than your opponent's king from an even position, you can't just be winning the game. So there was a lot of maneuvers here. White made sure the king pawn could move. The rook stops the king from advancing. The king is ready to come and stop the pawn from advancing. Just making sure nothing happens here. So king b3, rook to c8. A lot of maneuvers here. Of course, you don't want to exchange rooks because this pawn just goes down queen. So many rook moves. That was not a good move by white. Another thing you have to be very careful about when playing a rook. When you're playing rook and pawn endings, you have to be really careful about moving pawns. You can just move a pawn and then everything just blows up in your face. You don't want that. So b5, g4 was very bad by white. And another game. This is a game black could have really exploited. Probably black wasn't taking his time, or whatever the case is. But definitely, when you have a position like this, you want to make sure you get the win. So g4 was played king d6. I'm going to make a couple more moves because we don't want to exchange rooks. Why? Because once we exchange rooks, this pawn is pretty much going to nail white's coffin. So the rook just keeps avoiding the exchange. The rook needed to stay on the board to get some drawing chances. So everything, king, rook a4, rook back, check, king moves. And you notice this king can't really come close because you always have to defend that. And white has all this check on the b file and the a file, maybe c file is possible. And of course, you cannot make headways with the pawns on the king side. So white is looking happy. So rook b1 check, not the best move. Rook b5, rook to g1. Captures the rook, I think. It captures the pawn, okay. A6, a4, trying to go get a coin. Black said, white said, no, I can't let that pawn go. So let me go step around where that pawn is king up would be a good move. But I would have preferred maybe king here, so the king cannot approach. Well, maybe king here is also safe, so that you can't let the king come in front of you. So rook b4, pawn push, pawn push, rook to e1. The idea is just to go from the back. Grab those pawns, you have your own pawns, and all of a sudden, you didn't grab those two pawns, but if you can just grab one of them, you have a pass pawn. If he goes for your pass pawn, you take his pass pawn, your king comes in front of his pawn, and the game is draw. Nothing black can do. So that's something similar happened. Rook goes for the pawn, takes the pawn, check, moves the king down, pawn push, I think, check again, right? Okay, you want to check so that there are no there are no background mates. I'll say that because the king won't be able to get out because of the king in front of it. So pawn push, check, king to c2, pawn push, trying to go get a coin. What do? Rook trying to take the pawn, king move down, rook takes pawn, and at this point there is really nothing black can do. Black had a number of winning chances, and black couldn't make it happen. Okay, that was the game played by Mohammed against Bomo. Let us look at the game played by Abimbola Oshofoyi against Mohammed Hassan. And I have to say this, the guys drew their games while the girls delivered. The girls won their games. Good job, girls, ladies, sorry. So let's keep going. Let's see what happened in this game. Knight f3, e6, c4. Bimbo is known to be a c4 player. He knows his opening pretty well. So let's see how this game continued. B3 is played, G3. Of course, the idea is to fianchetto the bishops. Bishop is going to go to G2 to try to neutralize the bishop on B7. So bishop B7, bishop to G2, knight F6, castles, bishop E7, D4. You're always told to control the central squares. There's a reason for that. The more control you have on the central squares, the better your position is. So let's keep going. Castles, knight C3, still about the central squares. Developing your pieces, still controlling the central squares. D6, D5. White says, I'm going to play D5. I'm going to try to, block your bishop, get a hole on C6, cramp you a little bit and see how you respond to that. So white said, black said, I'm just going to play E5. Another thing is, if you're not ready, if you're behind in development, don't engage yourself in exchanges, because the more exchanges you make, the more your weaknesses get revealed. So when you're behind in development, it's not the time for you to start exchanging pieces. Let's don't forget that. E5, it says, no, I'm not going to open this position until I'm really ready to open this position. Knight to E1, C6, knight to D3, A5. A5 is a multi-purpose move, gaining some space, and also keeping an eye on the B4 square. Bishop to E3, developing the last minor piece, putting pressure on B6, especially after the A pawn has moved. So we have just the queen defending the B6 pawn. Things like that, you have to keep an eye on it. So let's keep going. Captures on D5, captures back with the pawn. Yeah. We want to make sure that pawn stays there so that the knight can go to C6, which is the most logical square for the knight. So the knight would have to come to D7 and C5 and then see what happens after that. Knight to G4, attacking the bishop. You have to move the bishop back. I always say this, don't just trade your bishop for a knight, especially when you're not sure how the position is going to play out. Because most cases we have open positions, and when you have open positions, you want to have a bishop. When you have a closed position, you want to have a knight. So let's keep going. Bishop D2, F5. All of a sudden, black is trying to create some play on the king's side. I'm not so sure of what white pieces are doing, especially the cluster you have on the D2, D3, and C3. Of course, I know the bishop is keeping an eye on that, but let's see what happened after this. F5, queen to B3, and knight D7. Black develops the last minor piece. Always remember this. Get all your pieces to good squares as quick as possible. Just get in there. Get in there first. Very important. Rook c1, bishop to a6, knight b5. Says I don't want you to keep your eyes on my position. So that move actually turned out to be a mistake by white. Um, bishop takes, not a good move. A better move would have been to move the pawn to a4, dislodge the knight on d3 so that the knight can come here with tempo on the queen, and all of a sudden the queen has to come to c4. There's a pin, doesn't look good. He has to play a4 maybe to stop that. Queen goes to d7, thread the knight takes pawn, followed by bishop takes. All kind of stuffs are happening here. Okay, and you always want to make sure you are in control. Anytime you lose control, that's going to be a problem. So let's get back. So knight b5, bishop captures, queen captures. There's a hold on c6. Keep an eye on that. Knight c5. Well, I'm not going to get to use that hold. I don't want you to get your rook to c6 to try and harass my b pawn. So I'm just going to move my knight to c5. So a3, h5. Black says, you know what? Since I really can't make anything happen in the center or the queen side, I think let me start moving my pawn down. Maybe if I can create some weaknesses, you know, I can somehow find a way to get my queen to h5 and threaten checkmate on h2. I mean, you have to dream big, you know. So b4, that's a blunder by whites. So many blunders in this tournament. Blunder that way, but you know, that's what chess is about. And after that move, white, black sees the initiative with the move knight to b3. The rook moves now. Knight d4, not knight takes, knight d4, hitting the queen, hitting the pawn with check. All of a sudden, white is a pawn down. You know, when I saw this position and I said, when I saw the game, and I said, wait a minute, Bimbo is playing it an 1880. Bimbo should win. But the game ended in a draw. Then I felt, you know what? It must be that the guy had an advantage and Bimbo really had to fight for the draw. And I think that's exactly what happened in this game. So queen moves, knight takes check, king moves, um, black goes back to d4. A better move would have been just to move your rook to c8. Get the rook to c8. Get all your pieces on good squares. You know, how many times are we going to say this? Get all your pieces on good squares. The knight is not under attack on e2. Nothing is attacking the knight. Just get your rook on c8. Harass the queen. Harass. Keep harassing the queen. So knight d4, black said, you know what? I'm just going to give you back your advantage. Sorry for me having ideas about doing anything about it. So h3 is played. Now there comes the tempo on the queen. The queen has to move. There's another tempo. The queen has to move. Black looks kind of, well, let's talk about white. White doesn't look so good. Position looks kind of cramped. You know, if you're playing, you can't just give such advantage to a player, you know, because his rating is whatever. No. Nowadays, ratings can be very deceptive, I tell you. Nowadays, ratings can be very deceptive. You can't say, oh, because the lower rated player, I'm just going to do whatever. No. So, you know, if you have an advantage in the position, you have to try to make sure you make it count. It's very important. So let's keep going. Knight h6. Bishop captures h6. G captures h6. I really don't know what white is getting for that exchange, but at least one thing is trying to free his position. You know, earlier white was a little bit worse, but now I think he's trying to free his position. So knight takes pawn. Now these tactics pretty much just win, you know, pretty much simplifies the position into a bishop, rook, rook, queen, queen ending. And these are opposite color bishops. Whenever you have a situation with opposite color bishop, the bishop that's always attacking is the one that has the advantage. But in this situation, this guy just pretty much exchanged all the pawns. They were left with just the bishop, and at the end of the day, they had no choice but to call the truce. So, because with opposite color bishop, it's really hard to play, have any winning chances. Like I said, unless the bishop is actually an active bishop. So queen here, that was a very bad move. And this is an interesting thing, even when the position is even, somebody can still go wrong. And that's one thing Magnus does so much. Even when the position still looks even, somebody can still go wrong. Queen a4 would have been a very strong move. Queen a4 would have been a very strong move. queen here is possible. There's a pawn push, and there's a very deadly discover. So queen b5 was played instead. Bishop takes, queen takes. Like I said, there are so many, a lot of captures, and at the end of the day, even with all the minimal material, somebody was still losing. So that's why when you're playing a game, you have to know if you're winning or you have to know if you're drawing. If you're drawing, stick to those draw maneuvers and don't just play anyhow so that you don't say, you know what, had I known, I should have just getting my draw, JJ. Stick to the draw maneuvers. And if you think you're winning, don't don't compromise your position. Don't make your position worse. So after a couple of moves, um, the game pretty much ended in a draw, and there was nothing anybody could do about that. So this was the round 8 game between Maldives. This is about 2 games. So game ended in a draw. Yeah, yeah, nothing much. Yeah, captures, capture. Okay, so let's get right to the next game, which is the game played by um, Hussein Nimal versus Torisha. Remember, we're playing the Maldives. So Torisha was on the black side here, and I think she got on advantage very quickly. D4, knight f6, c4, c6, knight c3, d5. This is the Slav. Why is this a Slav? Anytime you're playing against the d4 and your opponent plays and he plays d5 and protects the d5 with the c6, that's a Slav. If the d5 was protected with the e6, that's the queen's gambit. Know your openings, my people. Know your openings. So captures back. Bishop f4, knight to c6. This bishop f4 always gives white a slight pull, slight pull. Grandmasters play this position a lot, slight pull. So, you know, if you push a lot too hard, you can get in trouble. Always give white a slight pull. e3 is played, a6, knight f3 should come. Oh, bishop d3 first, bishop g4, queen b3, putting pressure on b7. Gains a tempo, queen knight a5, queen c2, e6, h3, bishop goes back to h5, knight g e2. I'm not sure of the way white is placing these pieces. I can speak for the knight on c3, but the knight on e2, I'm not sure. I don't know if he's trying to come to f4 or g3. I don't know. I don't know. But one thing about chess is if you can, you know, make the position work. Hey, guess what? We're gonna have to be playing the same line you are playing. So let's keep going. Bishop e7. Um, Bishop e7, white castles. Black, let's focus that castle back. Rook f1. That's a strange move. I'm like, are you trying to play on the? Oh, I don't think it works. You can't even take here because with the idea of this because the knight just takes. So I don't think that works. But it doesn't hurt to keep an eye on the c7 square. But then the rook fc1, I'm not so sure about that rook move. So let's keep going. Rook c8, very good move. Want to equalize, neutralize the effect of the rook on the c file. Bishop g5, bishop to g6, bishop captures, h captures, queen d3 threatening nothing. b5. I like this move by black, b5, because now black is trying to build a house on c4, and there is really nothing to stop that house being built. The only way you can stop it is by playing a b3, and then the dark squares become weak. All of a sudden, black is gaining some kind of momentum. I think that's exactly what happened. Bishop a3, rook goes off. Oh my god, now somebody is in trouble. Now somebody is in trouble. Somebody's in trouble. We have to be careful not to just give up advantages anyhow. Someone's in trouble here. Bishop takes. Why is it going? Why is it taking? Yeah, it doesn't want the knight to come to e4 and down, cause mayhem. Well, you could have played bishop f4 first, followed by rook to c1, so that when the knight comes, you can always take. You don't have your rook on c2 that is hanging. But anyway, bishop f6. You gotta be very careful for moves like that. Bishop f6, I don't like that move. Giving away bishop in such position when your dark squares are getting sort of compromised. I don't think that's a smart decision. Bishop f6, g takes f6, rook to d2, getting away from the pin of the c file. Let's keep our eyes open. G f5, rook to d1. White's position doesn't look so good. I'm not going to say so. White position doesn't look good, period. You have your rooks doubled on the close file. You have your queen on d3 doing nothing, have no influence on black's position. You can only come back to b1. The knight on c3 can't jump anywhere, can't jump, you can only jump backwards. Knight on f4, I would say, is the most active piece because it can actually go to f4, but that's about it. So, comparing this with black is looking really good. So, I won't be surprised if black finds a way to win this position. So, knight goes back to c6. The idea is to come to b4 to put pressure on that queen. Make black position a little, white position a little bit more difficult. f4, king g7, rook to f1. These pieces are not just doing anything. Knight to e7, knight goes to b1, bishop to d6, rook to c1. Now white gets the file back. White gets the file back. But I gotta keep going. Got one more game to go through. We can't be going into deep details. Just let's see what happened. Now white has a file back. It's about to exchange the major pieces on the C file, and let's see what happened after the exchange of the major pieces. Queen to b1, takes. Black is looking really good. I mean, this is black building houses in white's territory, and white is still cramped. Really can't do much. So let's keep going. Queen to c7, knight f3, knight goes to c2, just doing white anyhow. Knight takes, king takes, queen check, bishop b4. Bishop here is possible. There of this check. So many possibilities, but I don't think anything black can do to get some kind of advantage. But somehow black was able to make it work. And this is one thing about chess, being equal doesn't mean it's a draw. That the game is position is equal doesn't mean, oh, let's shake hands and draw. No, somebody can still crack. There's a time pressure. There's a nerve pressure. There's so many things. Somebody can still go wrong. So queen a5, h4, and this is what I'm talking about. When you start making moves like this, I'm not saying this move is bad or good, but I'm just saying when you keep repeating moves and you decide to change that move might just compromise your position. h4 is still good because you can move the pawn to g3. King can defend. You still really have nothing to worry about. So queen b6, king f3, queen b7. Moves are just being made here. Nothing spectacular. Nothing. And this is where I always tell people, look, know what you're playing for. If you're playing for draw, just maintain your position, JJ. Don't try to push pawns. If they push, you block. If you're playing for a draw, but if you're playing for a win, you can still dance around, but make sure you don't compromise your position. Knight e5 takes back. This is still even, but like I said, somehow someone will find a way to blow the. Now this is the question. What is this queen doing here? Okay, you want to take pawn. This is what I'm talking about. The moment you start thinking, oh, I can have some ideas, all of a sudden those ideas might not be so good, especially when your opponent starts to make threats was coming. Very good move. So this pawn fall. This is about to get a queen. So let's keep going. Check. Queen move to. That was not a good move. There was a better move here. Just come to b1. No, c1. Attacking the pawn there and threatening queen here. Queen b1. They're just trading blunders. Know what you're playing for. Then this is a pawn. This is another pawn, and of course the game is pretty much over. Good game, Torisha. You pumped your opponent. You showed your opponent why you are a 2020 while your opponent is an 1805. Good job. So let's see what Quick Pen did. Quick Pen was whites against Abdul Rahman Ali, rated 1844. Another c4. I think we should just tag the Nigerian team, the English team. I don't know, the English opening team. Everybody's playing c4. It's a good thing though. So c4, e6, g3, knight f6, bishop g2, d5. These are normal developing moves to this position. Nothing extraordinary. Castles back, d4, in control of the center squares, c6. Knight c3, knight b d7, queen c2, rook e8, rook d1. Very good move. You want to put your rook to a square where you can give an extra attack on the queen, especially when the pawns on d4 and d5 are about to get traded. And then all of a sudden, this rook is looking, not just the queen, also the bishop on d6. That's a very good observation by Quick Pen. So bishop b4, knight to d2. Now the idea is to play e4, just to gain some space. When you've developed your pieces, you put them on good squares, change the structure of your pawn, push your pawn and create some space for your pieces to breed. So knight goes back, e4 is played, captures, captures. White looks really good. White looks really good. F5 does, F5 was not such a good move because with the move F5, you're gonna have to suffer with this, especially when your bishop is on C8, being blocked by the pawns. You're yet to get the bishop in the game. You're still behind. And white has all these pieces in the game pretty much. I mean the minor pieces, because this can get in the game in one move. Black is gonna suffer, definitely. Black is gonna, and white was able to play on this bishop. Make sure this bishop didn't get in the game for a long time. The moment the bishop was able to get to the game was actually as good as lost. So white just kept putting pressure. Bishop f4, c5. There's another hole on d6, stopping the pieces, the bishop from breathing, from getting to the game. Bishop d6. White plays a a really nice positional. This was like a positional crush. Quick Pen is like, she's something else, I tell you. Okay, black is trying to open up the position as much as possible. It doesn't work like that. And even though there are some inaccuracies by white's Quick Pen, she was still able to get the job done. Rook e1, pressure on e6. Knight takes. If you take, I'm going to take back. I mean, yeah, it's still queen take. I mean, this is just over now. But quick, yeah, this is pretty much just over now. Yeah, there you go. Just pump push. Pump push now. Just pump. Oh, rook e7. Rook e7 was played. Rook e7. Then pump push. Then pump push. Then pump push. And the game is over. Nigerians, good job, guys. Good job, team. Because the team is made up of guys and ladies. So that was a nice victory against the Maldives. And keep rolling, guys. We wish you all the very best. We're rooting for you. And while you're there, make sure you have some fun, meet some friends, and we will be bringing the recap of the ninth round to you as soon as we can. Please stay tuned, and please you can check the video out, and make comments. Let us know what we could have done better, and your feedback is very necessary. All right. See you all soon. Take care. God bless. Bye for now.